Hi, Emily. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We'll wait until a couple minutes after 4 to make sure everyone has time to join.
Sounds fine. Hey, you were going to get me that link to the thing you'd sent me.
Right. Let me write.
Jenna. You can do that later. Boy, it's really slowed down here.
Has it? Is everybody's just kind of hunkering in?
Not much street traffic, and I'm having fewer and fewer people come in, but I'm still busy. Still have plenty of work to do.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling with our numbers, this is what we can expect right now.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll give it just one more minute here and let some more people join in. Make sure that we get as many people interested in tonight as possible to get on and sharing some information. And so just as a heads up, we are recording this session and we're live streaming it to YouTube right now. So just keep it in mind. Anything that you don't want recorded, just let me know. Send it to me in the private chat and I'll make sure it stays private. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. This is a little bit lighter group than I expected for this evening, but again, we're recording this, so if you're tuning in later or on another date entirely, that's just fine. You can always reach out to me to get this information anytime that you'd like. So you can reach out to me at chamberdirector@kodiak.org. Before we get this meeting started, I do just want to take a moment to acknowledge in the last 2 weeks, our community has lost 2 community members to COVID. We have at least 4, I think 6 currently hospitalized right now. Someone has been flown off the island. We're a small community. Our numbers are extreme. And I just want to make sure that we keep that perspective while we have our discussion this evening, because we're in a spot that our community hasn't been faced with yet. And let's just keep that in mind with all the discussion that we have. But on a completely different note, I am so excited to be welcoming Chris Eyler this evening. He is the Executive Director of the Northwest Region of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and he is joining us to share a few updates that we can expect more on the national federal level. So without further ado, Chris, I'm going to mute myself and I'll let you take it away, and I'll pull up slides when you're ready.
Great, thank you, Sarah. If you would go ahead and pull up my slides. And while you do, again, my name is Chris Eyler. I am the U.S. Chamber's Executive Director for the Northwest Region. And just so you understand what my role is and what that means, in addition to our headquarters and staff back in Washington, D.C., the U.S. Chamber does maintain a number of regional offices around the country. My role as the Executive Director for the Northwest Region is to work with our state and local Chamber of Commerce partners in the states of Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. We do this in order to make sure that you all are kept in the loop on the various issues that are taking place at the national level that are going to have an impact on the business community, but also to make sure that we are getting feedback from local chambers from across the country, particularly from the state of Alaska. I don't need to explain this to you. The many of the issues faced by the business community in Alaska are far different and very unique to a lot of the issues faced by businesses across the country. And as we advocate on behalf of the business community, we want to make sure that we have the perspective of all businesses in all states. So that is my role. And I hope that moving forward, we can continue to have these conversations. Your congressional delegation is quite good at reminding their colleagues about the challenges faced by businesses in Alaska, but it's also important to us that, as I said, to get that feedback so that your challenges, the challenges you face and the perspectives you deal with on a daily basis are reflected in the issues we advocate for in Washington, D.C. So with that, as Sarah mentioned, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we are dealing with right now. And unsurprisingly, our top priority is, and our top priority moving forward until the pandemic is over, is going to be making sure that the federal government is doing its part to provide the necessary assistance to help businesses weather this pandemic and get us to the other side, and make sure that the economic impacts are as manageable as possible. And just to begin with, just give you a sense of the economic numbers that we are seeing. As this chart illustrates, what we are seeing is the pandemic is having a very uneven impact on the nation's economy. After a sharp decline when the pandemic initially took hold and we saw shutdowns across the nation, we are seeing since the summer a number of industries recover quite well. The technology sector, big, large-scale retailers, software services, financial services, a lot of the industries where it's easier to work from home, work remotely. You're seeing a pretty sharp recovery, and many of these industries are back to where they were at the outset of the pandemic. However, a lot of other industries, particularly in the travel, entertainment, hospitality, food services, personal services sector, really any sector of the economy that requires a lot of face-to-face interaction with customers or a high volume of customers in order to be profitable, these sectors are continuing to struggle, and in many cases are continuing to decline. This goes without saying that Alaska has been particularly hard hit. Though it sounds like things on Kodiak may not be as bad as in other parts of the state, but given the state's reliance on a lot of seasonal businesses and tourism in particular, the state's economy has been hit particularly hard. Next slide, please. As this slide illustrates, the Bureau of Labor Statistics keeps track of employment across a number of sectors of the economy. And right now, over 17 sectors of the economy that the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks has the employment in 17 of those sectors is down somewhere between 15 and nearly 45% since February. In fact, in the most recent survey conducted by the Census Bureau, nearly 3 times as many small businesses have reported reducing their number of paid employees as have reported increasing employment. More than 4 times as many small businesses have reported reducing the number of employee hours as have reported increasing hours, and nearly 7 times as many small businesses have reported decreased revenue as have businesses that have reported an increase in revenue. Next slide, please. And so to bring this a little closer to home, in Alaska, 18% of Alaska's businesses, according to the most recent Census Bureau survey, have reported decreasing employment. 28% have reported decreasing employee hours, and over 46% of Alaska businesses have reported decreased revenue. Overall, if Congress does not take action immediately, over 12 million Americans and 19,000 Alaskans will lose their expanded unemployment benefit provided under the CARES Act by December 26th. So I think it goes without saying, our main priority right now is to make sure that Congress acts and provides additional pandemic relief There's no avoiding the fact that we are in a recession right now, but our goal here is to minimize the impact of the recession and make sure as many businesses as possible can continue paying their employees, irrespective of whether or not they're actually providing services. So next slide, please. So what we saw over the past 2 weeks is that last week, a bipartisan group of senators, as well as a bipartisan group of House members got together and put together a proposed framework of a potential phase 4 pandemic relief bill. And I should note that bipartisan group of senators also included your own senator, Senator Lisa Murkowski. Keep in mind that right now, this is still just a framework. And so that we are still working with Congress and we're working with the bipartisan group and congressional leadership to hammer out the actual legislative details. But what they have put forward is a budgetary and appropriations framework that provides additional funding for state, local, and tribal governments, additional funding for extended federal unemployment insurance, as well as an additional $300 per week supplement on top of what the state would already provide. Additional aid, $288 billion for small businesses. This would largely be provided through an extension and an expansion of the existing Paycheck Protection Program loan program that was created by the CARES Act, as well as additional funding for the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. It provides additional aid to the airlines, additional aid for vaccine development and distribution, as well as a number of other key priorities that need to be funded in order to both help keep businesses afloat, as well as keep states and their aid programs afloat. In addition to providing additional funding, it also provides for a short-term federal protection from coronavirus-related lawsuits in order to give states time to develop their own liability protections. Next slide, please. All of what the bipartisan group has put forward is very consistent with what the U.S. Chamber and the business community in general has been advocating for since the initial CARES Act was passed in the spring. Our main priorities have been, as long as we are dealing with the pandemic until we can get to the other side of this crisis, is that the federal government needs to make sure it's providing support for small and mid-sized businesses, provide liability protections to protect businesses from predatory and opportunistic lawsuits, provide assistance to child care facilities and educational facilities to help them implement social distancing and PPE requirements as they are allowed to reopen. We of course think these facilities should not open unless and public health officials say it's safe. But once they do, there's going to be a lot of requirements that are placed on them to open safely, and those requirements are going to cost money that a lot of these facilities simply don't have in their budgets. So we're asking that the federal government step in and provide assistance so that they can open safely. Provide additional federal aid for unemployment. Many states are at the point of exhausting their unemployment trust funds, and the federal government's going to need to step in to help not only help keep those trust funds funded, but also continue providing additional unemployment, because there are a lot of workers who simply are not able to work from home or work remotely. And there are a lot of workers who are losing their jobs, and those jobs are not going to come back anytime soon. Until we are in a situation where the economy can safely reopen, we want to make sure that those individuals can continue paying their bills. And then lastly, provide assistance for state and local governments. As I noted already, a lot of states are on the verge of exhausting their unemployment trust funds. Our concern here is that when they exhaust those trust funds, a lot of states call for an automatic tax increase on businesses to begin replenishing those trust funds. We want to help those states replenish those trust funds without seeing a tax increase placed on businesses that cannot afford them while they cannot open. Additionally, a lot of states are at the point where they are looking to lay off teachers, firefighters, police officers, A lot of government workers, because they have depleted their funding, they are not seeing the revenue come in because tax revenues are down so substantially since the beginning of the pandemic. Again, we want to avoid those types of layoffs, particularly for first responders. So we're urging the federal government to step in and help the states replace the revenues that they have lost as a result of tax revenues being down so sharply because of the pandemic. But really, our top priority here is that first category, is providing aid to small and mid-sized businesses. Congress did act quickly in the spring when they passed the CARES Act and created the Paycheck Protection Program. For those of you who have taken out a Paycheck Protection Program loan, I think we all agree that it was not necessarily a perfect program, but it was, part of that is because it was rolled out very quickly in order to get money out the door and in the hands of businesses as soon as possible. There have been a number of changes that have been made along the way. And I will note that both Senators Murkowski and Sullivan, as well as Congressman Young, were very instrumental in helping to make a number of changes to that program when it became clear that it was not necessary. The initial structure of the program was not responding well to the seasonal nature of many of Alaska's businesses. And they were able to make some very good changes to allow seasonal businesses to have more time to spend that money and get those loans in a way that would be more helpful to them. In addition to extending and expanding the PPP, we also want to make sure that businesses, particularly very hard hit businesses who've already exhausted their initial PPP loan, can take out a second round of loans. We want to make sure that the forgiveness process for PPP loans is made much more streamlined and easier, particularly for the smallest of businesses whose loans are on average $105,000. We are asking Congress to make all loans of $150,000 or less actually presumed forgiven after they fill out a very simplified forgiveness request form. And then lastly, we also want to make sure that the Paycheck Protection Program is open to all nonprofits, in particular our state and local Chamber of Commerce partners. Right now, under the Paycheck Protection Program, only 501c and 501c19 nonprofit organizations are eligible to receive Paycheck Protection Program loans. This excludes most chambers of commerce, which are organized as 501c6 or 501c4 nonprofits. Lastly, I do want to note that there's a lot of discussion around the liability protection request. This is something that I think is being misconstrued quite a bit in the media. Many in the media are suggesting that what we're asking for here is a blanket protection from all those lawsuits. That is not the case. What we're asking for here is a short-term safe harbor that is targeted at claims arising from coronavirus. Again, that would provide a safe harbor from lawsuits to businesses that are making a good faith effort to follow public health guidance that's coming down from state and local public health officials, as well as CDC and OSHA. Given all of the uncertainty around the virus, we feel that businesses cannot reopen without the threat of lawsuits hanging over their heads. If this protection is not put into place, that just, as I said, provides a temporary protection if they are making a good faith effort to follow public health guidance. Of course, if a business is engaged in willful misconduct or gross negligence, they would not be able to avail themselves of this protection. So with that, I want to give you all some opportunity to ask some questions. Again, I do want to just emphasize that your congressional delegation has been very good about making sure their colleagues in Congress are well aware of the many unique challenges, particularly surrounding the pandemic that the state of Alaska is facing. But as I said, I hope that we can continue these conversations for going forward in the future, because there are going to be a number of issues that come up that I want to make sure that we are getting not just the Alaska chambers or the Anchorage chambers of feedback on, but as I want to make sure that we're getting the feedback from chambers like Kodiak and some of the smaller communities in the state. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Chris. We really appreciate you coming here and chatting with us about all of this. I don't see any questions that have come in the chat just yet, but I'll keep that open. I have to say, I apologize for my technology issues here right now. I had to switch to an iPad from my desktop today, and it just does not work the same as the platform I'm usually used to. So just to get things started, I've been sitting in on the bi-monthly U.S. Chamber of Commerce calls, and let me say first how helpful those are to me as a local chamber to be able to disperse some information to our members. But to expand on some of the insurance coverage options, Kodiak tends to be fairly removed even from mainland Alaska, but definitely from the lower 48. So can you walk us through a few of the kind of specific concerns businesses are having and why they're not feeling safe with the protections they have with their current insurance?
Well, I think a lot of, say, business interruption insurance policies specifically exclude pandemic. And one of the problems that they're encountering is that they cannot collect on those policies because of that exclusion. And one of the challenges that we are running into is that you cannot retroactively go in and change the terms of an insurance contract to force an insurance company to pay out for a business interruption policy for a pandemic. And so we are engaging with a number of stakeholders, both in the business community who are looking to be compensated, as well as working with the insurance industry to find some solution here. There was, this is a situation that kind of arose, a similar situation arose following 9/11, where a lot of those insurance policies specifically excluded terrorism attacks. And what happened after 9/11 was the creation of Terrorism Risk Insurance Act, and the federal government stepped in and basically was, subsidizing insurance policies. We're exploring options that would provide something similar in the case of pandemics, but those are ongoing discussions, and right now there really aren't many tangible solutions or tangible proposals out there right now. But that is really the big insurance issue that's arisen right now with respect to the pandemic.
Sure, thank you. And so as we talk as well about good faith efforts, many of us here in Kodiak have business mitigation plans that we've worked with our local government to create. So if a business is following that, they really shouldn't have concerns about that restriction, correct?
Well, I think that is the goal, is that like I said, if you are out there doing what the public health officials are asking you to do, and the state has said you can open for business and you're following the rules that they're putting out there, we feel that you should have some protection from being sued in that situation. There's just a lot of uncertainty about this virus still. Even though we've learned a lot in the last 9 months, there's still a lot of uncertainty about it. And if businesses are going to survive, they're going to have to be open to some degree. And if they're following that public health guidance, we feel that there should be this temporary protection in place to help them so that they won't be concerned about being targeted for lawsuits.
Sure, that's perfect. So another question that I have pivoting would be about this CARES Act money and a possible new program coming forward. Here in Kodiak, like you say, we have done better than most of the communities in Alaska. Our community had very early business grants that our businesses got to take advantage of, and I think that really helped. But we seem to be on the verge with our case counts going up every day, really approaching a new standard that we haven't been in, that a lot of the rest of the lower 48 has been in. So how close are we, do you think, to having these funds pass? And if they don't pass by the end of December, what should we look forward in 2021?
I think we remain cautiously optimistic that something will happen. There is agreement on both sides of the aisle that something more needs to be done. what we're dealing with right now is that Congress they have two things they have to do really before the end of the year. They have to fund the government, and then they have to do something about this pandemic, the pandemic relief. Both things are kind of moving together procedurally. The expectation is that if they can reach an agreement on pandemic relief, it will be attached to the end of year funding bill. The current funding for the government, it will run out tomorrow, but they're going to pass a 1 week extension to give themselves more time. So our hope is that sometime over the weekend, by the middle of next week, they can come to an agreement on pandemic relief funding and get that passed. If it doesn't happen, there is an expectation that once the new Congress is sworn in and the Biden administration is sworn in, that they will again make an effort to come up with a new pandemic relief package. That is not ideal. Like as you said, you're starting to see a spike on Kodiak. There's a massive spike going on across the country. We can't wait another 5 to 6 weeks. We need to have this done now, and so that's why we're putting all of our lobbying efforts into pushing on Congress to get something done before the holidays.
Okay, thanks so much for that, Chris. I've asked a lot of questions here. I wanted to kind of set the framework and the groundwork for us all. I'm happy. Anybody that has questions, go ahead and chime in, send a chat, whichever you feel most comfortable with, and we'll give that just a couple seconds here for you to get in there. All right. I am not seeing anything coming through. Chris, I know that you are always at our disposal, and you're always so quick to respond to any emails that I have for you. So I'm certain if anyone watching this video after the recording that's live here wants to reach out, they're absolutely able to do that. Oh, that's okay. I see that we've got a question. Will PPP forgiveness paperwork need to be submitted before we can apply for a second round? Do you have any insights on that?
I do not have the answer to that. I can check on that and follow up with you so that you could respond to the individual who asked that question.
Okay.
But a lot of it is, and one of the problems with the PPP is that it has been kind of a make it up as you go type of program. Like I said, they made the program intentionally vague so that the agency could push this money out as quickly as possible, which has resulted in a lot of things not being spelled out very clearly. But I will check on that. And a lot of it is going to depend on what is agreed to if they're able to reach an agreement next week.
Very good, thanks.
Sarah, Tyler Cornell is here. I have a quick comment, not necessarily a question, but just, if you do have the ears of those that you're lobbying for, maybe commentary that, people who are employed with reasonable incomes don't necessarily need another check. I'd never turn one down, but I don't need one. The people that need it are those that are unemployed. And I think that those unemployed folks want to get back in the workplace, but can't find jobs, but they will spend that money first. They're not going to put it in their savings account or go buy, some stock or something like that. They'll spend that money and pump the money into the economy first. I think that's the important message to get out. So thank you for being here this evening.
Right. And, to that point, the chamber has been fairly agnostic when it comes to the issue of direct payments, like we saw in the spring. Our real focus is supporting the unemployment system, because as like you said, it's the individuals who are out of work or who really need the most assistance. So we want to make sure that first and foremost, those individuals are able to get that assistance and continue paying their bills, but also make sure that we're helping to support the state unemployment systems that are really under strain right now, as so many people are calling on that benefit.
Absolutely. Thanks again. I have not seen any new questions come in. We'll chat here for just a second longer to make sure that we don't get anything new coming in. But again, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce actually does a bi-monthly phone call update on Fridays. I believe here in Alaska, it's at noon, but I can't remember. I just have it reoccurring on my calendar. And so anyone that wants to tune into these are not closed calls. You're welcome to register for those. They're free to attend and always have such helpful information. Okay.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And like I said, please do not hesitate to call on me. 20 years ago, I was a staffer for Senator Frank Murkowski, and I did have the opportunity to get out to Kodiak once. I hope to again soon. I'm usually up in the state 4 or 5 times a year. So at some point, hopefully we can all sit down face to face and have a broader discussion about how the U.S. Chamber works with our state and local chamber partners.
Sounds great. Thanks so much again for joining us, Chris. You're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting. We're just really going to be talking very locally here about what our businesses have been facing in the last week.
Great. I'm actually going to stick around for a little bit. So.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks so much. Okay, so moving on, we know that we had our local ESC update today at noon from Mike Twangy. Pretty reasonably, again, I didn't have the expectation that we were probably going to change risk levels today. I know that our case counts have increased really significantly, and that's something that a lot of people in the community are calling for, and I understand that reason why. Again, bringing it back to the beginning of this meeting, we have lost community members. We have multiple community members hospitalized and a lot of people sick right now. So keeping that perspective, absolutely, it's understandable that the community would want to hunker down further and restrict things further. But the ESC really has been committed to keeping our businesses open. I talk to them again and again every week about the fact that we are in the holiday season, especially for our retailers here. If they were to have to close their doors right now, this would be catastrophic and could really put some of them out of business. So I've been advocating in that capacity for our businesses, always keeping in mind that we need to be safe. I do continue to advocate that even if we go into that black status, that you would be permitted to be in your business and fulfilling online orders, virtual orders, and maybe even doing some appointment-only shopping. So again, we're continuing to advocate for that, but my advocacy isn't perfect. I rely so much on the data that I get from all of you as business owners to find out where we have holes, what I need to push a little bit further for with the ESC. So part of this evening and every week is hearing from you and understanding what issues you're facing so that I can bring those up so that we can try to solve those to help keep the economy strong here in Kodiak. We've been less impacted than so many other communities. And so hopefully we can hunker down here a little bit and do our part and ease up on these case counts so that we can open schools and open our businesses again fully. I know that I'm losing my voice. Let me take a drink of water here. We have the 25% occupancy that's currently in place right now. I haven't heard a lot of feedback from businesses as far as that being a major hindrance. I know that that's impacting our restaurants the most, but I do believe most of our restaurants have anticipated this. They've been here before. They have a model that seems to be working for them, at least for a short-term time. Always balancing that risk versus benefit. I think our business owners are doing a great job of that. And so I really thank you guys for doing that. We also have the mask mandate that's been in place for a while. I haven't heard any horribly negative stories from any of our businesses now that we actually have the mandate. I know that prior to the mandate, we saw some issues and some businesses were a little less strict on that policy if they decided to institute one. I do want to make sure again that we reiterate there's the mask requirement. If for some reason someone can't tolerate a full face covering mask, they should be utilizing a face shield. Now, if you have a customer or a patron coming into your business that does not have either, you are able to ask them, do you have a medical exemption that doesn't require you to wear a mask or a face shield? And if they say yes, you do need to adhere to that. That's part of the Americans with Disabilities Act and part of HIPAA. You know, they don't have to disclose medical information to you. Now, there are some very specific exceptions to that rule when it comes to, you know, face-to-face contact, when that's going to actually put you and your employees at risk. So be sure that you check with your licensing board or another authority to verify exactly what options you have in that situation. As far as our current mandates, our current restrictions, does anyone have anything that they'd like to weigh in on and make sure that I'm aware of? You can send it in private chat, or you can just pop on and let me know. Like I say, so far, I haven't heard anything particularly negative or that's not working for people. So again, just let me know. If you're not here in real time, you can always reach out to me at the chamber, 486-5557, or chamber director at Kodiak.org. I don't care if you're a member with the Chamber of Commerce right now. We are here for the entire business community. So please feel free to reach out. Anything in chats?
All right. Hi, I'll join.
Yeah.
I never like to be on a Zoom when nobody talks. I have to say that I was really surprised by the 25% capacity that I could have at the shop, which would give me, they said 8 people. I talked to some folks at the borough or the city. Anyway, so that puts me at 8 people, and it didn't feel right. It felt so. Made the decision to go appointment only. But I also don't want us to go into black. I guess I don't have a point other than to say it really surprised me that that's what they based it on. It just seems too generous.
Right. So I can tell you, as far as what they came up with, that they're having a hard time differentiating our essential businesses versus our essential businesses. Literally having a list of actual businesses here in the Kodiak community, because we don't have a business license requirement for the city or borough of Kodiak. They actually don't have a lot of information to go off of. And so that's where you're seeing some of these more broad, sweeping, generalizing capacity restrictions. When you get down to it, 25% is probably more than most of us typically have in any of our businesses at any given time here in Kodiak. 1.2, remember that 25% capacity does include your employees. So that is not just patrons, that is also your employees. So anyone in the building at that time does count towards your 25% capacity. As a business owner, you are more than welcome to put additional restrictions in place, just like Melissa did. You can say, you know, we're only going to have one group of customers at a time, one family group at a time, or 2 or 3. You know, you're able to make those decisions based on your own personal feelings. You can close, you can go to appointment only shopping. That's what we're seeing a lot of our businesses do. If you haven't prepared for that yet, if your website hasn't been developed, if you don't have a really good online presence, just please reach out. We're happy to help you get the right resources and point you in the right direction, and often even just volunteer our own time and technology and experience, because we want to see our businesses succeed and thrive past this pandemic. You know, this is exceptional circumstances and situations, and we're here to help anyone regardless of membership right now. One of the concerns that has been brought to me outside of this meeting was the enforceability of the mask mandate. So we were told when the mask mandate went into place that it is enforceable, and that is correct. but with some caveats. So as business owners, you have your own private property, even if it's in a public space and you're renting it, that's still your private property that you have the option to place restrictions. You have options available to you. So we were thrown a little bit of a curveball then when we heard from the police chief that the enforceability aspect, as they perceive it, is more of you can call the police to have a customer removed from your store, but you do then need to be prepared to press trespassing charges. So I know that is that's a curveball. That's not something that we have the expectation of. It sounds like if the city were to instead make it part of the city code during the pandemic, that might be a viable option, but it would have to be written in a separate form than the mandate as far as the police chief is currently concerned. So I just want you guys to be aware, if you're going to enforce that mask mandate and you have someone very aggressive to where you feel the need to call the police for that enforcement, the expectation would be that you would press charges against them. I know that's a heavy one to take. So did anyone have any questions about that? Or is there anything you'd like me to pass along further to the ESC to advocate for you guys? What are your feelings about it? If you're comfortable sharing, if not, you can call me later. Okay, not seeing any. So we'll go ahead and go on again for ways to prepare for the future. So we know that it's frankly fairly likely that we might go into the black status maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks, if we can't get our case counts under control. I do have to preface this with saying the ESC never lets me know in advance what they're going to do, maybe an hour before, so that I can start to ask questions and get graphics prepped. But I never really know what the requirements are going to be until I hear them on the Thursday updates with you. That's why we're doing these 4 o'clock updates, so that if something were to pop up, I have time to get questions answered that I know are going to come to me at the 4 o'clock update. So if we do go into that black status, bear with me. I'll be getting questions answered. Again, you know how I'm advocating for you guys as far as being able to still conduct some form of business. Again, keeping in mind the gravity of the situation with the deaths and illnesses that we really have spreading throughout Kodiak. So make sure you're online. That's the biggest recommendation that I can give to you right now. Make sure that you have options for appointments online, that you have inventory online. If it's not something you can keep up with right now because the holiday demand is so extreme, go ahead, just make sure that you know how to do it so that you have a 24 to 48 hour turnaround. And as soon as you have that information, email us at the chamber. You can do chamber@kodiak.org, chamber director@kodiak.org, crd@kodiak.org. All 3 emails will get you to the full group of people that need the information. And from there, we'll be able to disperse that to the Kodiak community. We're going to start doing Friday updates for our retail businesses to let the community of Kodiak know how they can do their shopping throughout the week, depending on the status. We know that for the most part, our restaurants are able to operate regardless of the emergency level because people need to be able to buy food. We don't want to drive everyone to the grocery store at one time. So we do want to keep our restaurants open. That's likely to continue to stay in place. Dine-in options would probably be removed. But again, make sure you're online. That is the biggest thing that I can advocate for. If you don't have those resources, if you have any questions about it, reach out to us. We have so much tech experience that we can help on just about any platform. So with that, any questions in that whole chunk of information there?
I have a question.
Sure, Emily.
So does black mean everything's going to be closed down, or what does black mean?
So the direction that we have on the current plan for black is actually that all non-essential businesses would be closed and even some essential businesses would be closed, dependent on how necessary the essential services are. Now, we've seen with each and every one of these levels that the ESC tweaks things here and there. That's why the feedback from our business community is so critical, is because if you can let me know, if you let me know your mitigation plans or your plan for that black status, then I can go ahead and let the ESC know, hey, these are the sort of exceptions we need to be considering. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
That's what I'm wondering. Like, would we be able to fulfill online orders? You know,
That's exactly what I've pushed for. In theory, the answer is no to start with, but I do believe that we have that reasonable accommodation in the minds of the ESC. I think that at this point in time, I have the expectation that they would allow that. If they wouldn't for some reason, you can guarantee their phones won't stop ringing, because I really thought that's where we were. So yes, I have that expectation that you should be able to be in your facility to be able to fulfill any online orders and do curbside pickup.
I think the other thing I would like help with, and I feel like I'm asking too many questions, but hi, Emily. It's good to see you. I had an employee come back from college, because I always try to employ the high schoolers that I knew. Came back from college, worked for 2 hours, and then was a close contact. And so I've been watching how Alicia has been handling that out at Java Flats. I could really, there's the kids. I could really use, I would not mind some help couching how to say something like that. Right now, he did all the right things. He's not working, all that, we're good. But if there are more, myself or my employees, what's the right way? How can we say that without scaring people away from shopping at our businesses?
So I think really the number one step is that that you've taken the right precautions and that you don't have any close contacts at your store yourself, other than that employee. So one of the tactics you can use, like we've actually talked about, but it's for the good of the group, is making sure that you base your schedules on a staggered system so that you have limited overlap of employees. With that, it's better to close down for an hour between shifts if you have to, than to have to close for 2 weeks because your full staff has then been infected or is a possible close contact, and you have to see how things play out. As far as the semantics of exactly how to present that to your customers, I think Alicia has done a really exceptional job. She's a great example to follow. She's honest about it. And when you have a mitigation plan that has kept most people fairly safe, and you do have a plan, you can go forward and say, please bear with us. In 2 days, we're going to open for very limited hours because of some close contacts. I would encourage you not to disclose that you've had positive cases. If that's what happens, that gets really close to violating HIPAA, with the fact that we are Kodiak and our community is extremely small. It is not hard to figure out of a group of 3 employees at a business who might be the positive case. So be very careful with that. Just say, due to the COVID pandemic and, abundance of caution, this is what we're going to be doing. And I think Alicia has been a really fantastic example. For those of you who haven't seen, Alicia is the owner of Java Flats, and she went ahead and put posts out on Facebook saying that they're going to be closed for X amount of days, and on such and such day they're going to open with only 1 person staffing it. And so please be kind. It will be a limited menu. It will be a limited staff. Please be kind. Please be patient. And I think she's done well with that. And that's a great example to follow. At heart, we are still Kodiak. And if you can bring that very real element of your small business, you're the person behind it, back to the community, that really brings it back around. And I think we've gotten a fairly good response from things like that. Just closing your doors, we can see, has been a pretty negative impact. We've had a couple businesses just close their doors. Some put signs up, some don't. At a minimum, please put a sign on your door if that's all you're gonna do. And let people know when you expect to be open again, because that's probably the worst thing that you can do, is close your doors and not communicate. Anything else? Okay, well, we can go ahead and wrap it up then this evening. Thanks again so much for everyone who joined in. It's a little bit smaller group than I expected, but I think that people are starting to do their transition plans right now, even regardless with us staying in the red status instead of going to black. I think a lot of people assumed we'd go to the black status. If we do go to that status, you can guarantee whether it's a Thursday or not, we'll have one of these meetings so that we can touch base. But as always, I'm here, I'm available, ready to answer your questions, ready to at least be an open pair of ears to be able to advocate for whatever you guys need. Okay?
Great,
Thank you,
thank
Sarah.
you.
All right, with that, that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off, and I appreciate you guys for joining. Thanks again.
Thanks for doing this.
Of course. Bye.